Everybody, happy Thursday. Now today's question is all about defining the term process. I use that a lot when I talk about therapy, so let's get into that. But before I do, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I know there are a lot of new members of our community, and make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on because I put out videos on Mondays and Thursdays and you don't want to miss out. Now today's question is, hey Katie, give me the definition of process. For new viewers and for those of us who are new to therapy, what do therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, etc. mean by the word process? Please do a video on this. I know you talked about processing the hurt, but what does that entail exactly? What would we do in therapy with our therapist to process whatever it is we want to process? I love this question, and I think it's great that we get in the habit of defining terms that we use so that we make sure everybody understands what we're really talking about. And I know I use the term process a lot. So the term process itself is defined as a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. Just think of like milk. Milk is something that is processed, right? We use that term into other forms. Can be turned into butter, or even better, it can be turned into cheese. But by processing things, what that means is we're taking steps or actions in order to change something. And when it comes to therapy, we know that we manage things best, meaning we can process and deal with things in our life best when we put them into narrative form. Just like I talked about in the past with Alexa, I don't know if you remember, but we talked about how children will recount their days to their parents in their own story. And they do this as a way of processing through all that happened that day. It helps us sort through all that we have been through, and it helps us start building a story of our life and who we really are. And this also allows us to more easily recall the story that we tell ourselves about it, like what happened that day, and file it away in our memory. And if any of you remember, I've talked about Inside Out and how they have those marbles. And I love the fact that they use those marbles because if we have a trauma, it's like we take that marble and we throw it on the floor and it splinters everywhere. But by putting something in narrative form is the equivalent of us picking up all those splinters and all those little tidbits and things that might have flown into a whole nother memory, noticing it belongs to this one, putting it back into that marble and rolling it away into our long-term memory. Does that make sense? We're kind of putting all the information together and filing it away. And that process that I'm talking about of picking up all those pieces, putting them together and rolling them away into our memory, or if you like to consider it like files of paper, putting in a file folder and filing it away, whatever works for you. But that process is the process I'm talking about in therapy. It's when we take the time to think about our life and things that have happened and turn it into a narrative form or a story that we're comfortable with and that is truthful. When things are too much to talk through in the moment or they're too emotionally charged for us, they can disrupt this story that we want to tell ourselves. Like if we did something that's not really us, like it doesn't feel like something we would normally do, or if something bad happened that we feel like shouldn't be happening to us, then we don't feel that this situation fits in to the narrative or story that we want to tell. And therefore, in order to process through these situations that don't fit in to our story that's already happening, we have to find a way to integrate them and help them better make sense. Because trauma and intense upsets are often lost in confusion. So by taking the time to put it into a story in chronological order, it can clarify all that we've been through. And so processing things is essentially that. And it can also mean that we take a look at past events and talk those through. And the reason for doing this is because we have an entirely different perspective now. We are older, hopefully wiser, and may even feel more empowered than we did back then. For example, let's think of our parents. Let's say they got divorced when we were young. We may believe that that was all our fault because we weren't good enough, smart enough. We didn't take, the trash out all those times your dad asked, or your mom had asked you to do the dishes and you refused. But as an adult, we can be able to look back and see that relationships don't always work out. And it had much more to do with how our parents communicated or didn't with one another. And the fact that they maybe just weren't in love anymore. And so you can see how having a different perspective can help us better understand a situation. And that's why it's nice as an adult to get back into therapy to be able to talk through all the stuff that happened when we were a child, because we've come a long way. And lastly, by simply talking through any past hurts or traumas, we are in essence, very sneakily I might add, doing some exposure therapy. You remember exposure therapy. I've talked about it in a video, but if you don't, I'll link it in the description. But by talking these things out, being validated on how we felt, and realizing that nothing bad's gonna happen if we do say some of the things that out loud, we are, in essence, disproving any of the falsely held beliefs we may have had. Obviously, you can see that the term process can mean many things depending on the issue, but overall, the goal of quote-unquote processing through something is to get you to the point where you can talk about what happened, whether it be a trauma or not, and not have any overwhelming emotional response to it. So if talking about an issue used to make me clam up, dissociate, or cry uncontrollably, after it's been processed through, I won't have any of those experiences. I'll be able to talk about it without having any emotional response. Thus, by processing through our past hurts, upsets, and any confusions we might have, we can lessen the amount of shame, embarrassment, and fear that we can feel. I hope that kind of clears up what the term process means. We're taking actions to change something. And in therapy, that means that we're changing our narrative. We're relearning the story, clearing up any confusion, taking away any extreme emotional charge so that we feel more in control and more understanding of what's gone on in our life. This video has been brought to you by the Kenyans on Patreon. If you would like to support the creation of these mental health videos, click the link in the description and check it out. And as always, if you have a different way that you define the term process, or you've done something in therapy that's really sped that up, let us know in the comments, because we're working together with your experience and my expertise towards a healthy mind and a healthy body. And I will see you next time. Bye.